So what we're going to do today is do the second. We're going to do Matthew 25, verse 2, and to continue on with the wise and foolish virgins. And I'm going to bring that scripture up. The next several verses are very telling. And it's interesting because when you look at just the English interpretation on there, you can form an opinion right away. And one of the things that we have been sharing recently is about the mirror aspect of what the scriptures are saying to us, because dependent upon where you are at within your own spiritual growth and what's going on the inside is going to be a tone and an inflection upon what you see on the screen, like on your words, whatever you're reading, that tonality inflection of that which is in you is what you're going to see through the written word. So whether it's in your own excavation work or just what has been interpreted, everyone is going to see this different. And I was always wondering when I was in the Christian church, where I could read a scripture and then, a couple years later come back and see it differently. I didn't have the connection of that mirror tool. Like there was no knowledge of that at all. And I think that's probably because many people have known this. This has been more new to me within the last 6 months in my self-discovery. But back then, there was nobody talking about this, at least in my sphere of influence. I had no idea about that. I had no idea about that which I saw in another person was actually a reflection of what was going on inside of me. And then to be able to translate to that, to say it, that's what the word is doing as well, is just interesting, because that thought would have never, ever crossed my mind.
Well, Greg Braden teaches quite a bit on it, but he goes back into the Essenes writings.
Sure.
And there's 7 mirrors.
Yeah.
And he teaches on those mirrors. Yeah.
Very interesting.
It's pretty interesting.
Well, it makes me wonder then if because we are all in this maturation process collectively, all of humanity, that those who have sown into the collective consciousness of going through that information has now been made more available for us to reach into it and grab it, because it wasn't a concept that I had before. I mean, I hadn't heard about those Essene writings, and I hadn't heard Greg Braden speak about it. It was just like, it just started revealing itself. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is, whoa.
The dark night of the soul, people use that phrase, but that's what it comes from. That's one of the
very, very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, then, having said that, we can actually, we can look at those things to try to make what we're looking at more personal, right? So what I'm going to be sharing with you guys is a summation total of what I have gathered in my years and my journey in how I see. As we're sharing it, you guys might see something different. It might speak something completely different than what I'm seeing. But I want to present it just so we can have conversations, because some of this stuff that has been translated has been it's archaic, like it doesn't fit us anymore. And there's many, many, many people that are questioning these things, that want to throw the entire baby out with the bathwater. Like, the Bible has no value. Well, there is value there if you dig. And for those of us who have studied the English scriptures, it's really good to have that as a reference point. How would I know about the wise and foolish virgins to even know where to dig if I had never read and studied the Bible before? I wouldn't. It would be a whole brand new thing. So I can see the benefit in it. And I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because when you begin to dig these things out, you can go back and reread the English scriptures with the comprehension of the undercurrent, the water that is flowing underneath the waters, the surface waters. And you can look at some of the English words and go, I know what Hebrew word is that they're using right here. And it can take you really deep. So I don't want people to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but we need to have discussions on this so that we can go into the deeper things and be able to connect to the deeper waters, instead of just shallow surfacing along and saying that it is literal as written, because we have grown past that. We've definitely grown past that as a group of people, especially on the spiritual path. So when we look into the wise and foolish virgins, I'm going to go ahead and pull up my document here that I've been working on. And I think I'll move you guys around here a little bit. Give me a second. There we go. So we're going to end up going back and forth between what is written on the Peshitta so that I can highlight the letters. So it's going to be a little bit of a slow process, but I put some notes here so that we can talk about what's going on. So 5 of them were wise and 5 of them were foolish. For the very first word that we're talking about is the word 5. Now, there's some real profundity about this, but we're just going to go through the surface part, and then we're going to begin to dig deeper and see what's going on here. So this word by itself is static. There is nothing added or deleted to it. So it's just in its root form, which means, like the example I always use is the lump of clay. So if we take it back to things that we've talked about before with tohu and bohu, being formless and void when we are entering in, well, this is a lump of clay that is formless and void. So in its static nature, it's waiting to have a formation process take a hold. So here's the lump of clay. I'm handing it to you, and we're going to look at it, and we're going to see what can we do with this lump of clay. So in the meaning of 5, part of this means to arm and equip, or to be armed and equipped. So yes, it means 5, but it also means to be armed and equipped. So here's a lump of clay that's being handed to you who is formless and void, and says, what I'm giving to you is so that you can arm yourself and equip yourself. I don't know about you, but I think that's pretty cool. Because you don't see, to see it as just like, well, hey, it's the number 5. Well, unless you begin to dig to go, oh my gosh, there's so much more information here. I need to pay attention to this. This number 5 means I'm arming and equipping myself with something that's a lump of clay that I get to do something with in my own hands. Because everything that we are looking at, if we don't make it personal to us, then change is never going to happen. It's up to us, the work and deed of our hand, to make this a reality in our life so that we are no longer formless and void. So then when we take a look at this a little bit further, I think it's interesting that when I went to the Ernest Cline's etymology of the Hebrew language, it was talking about that this was possibly related to the division of an army into 5 parts. And there's a reason why I'm sharing this. So we've got the van, the body, the rear, and the 2 wings. And when you look at it, it makes a cross. So instantly, my mind, just because of the years that I've been in the scriptures, and especially in the Old Testament, I was thinking about the position of all the tribes around the tabernacle. So when we look at the front guard or the vanguard, we've got the vanguard, the rear guard, the right and the left wing, and the center. And it forms a cross. So this literally is like the Paleo-Hebrew form of the Tav. So these things were symbolic, that were trying to speak something much greater. And I find it interesting that when you look at this, dependent on the way it's set, like in a compass, I didn't go deep to see which one was north and which one was south and which one was east and west. And that is a much deeper study that I didn't want to bring in here. But there are very specific words for the north and the south and the east and the west. Very, very specific Hebrew words. And we probably will do a deeper dive on that at one point. But this was just the imagery that popped in my head. And I want to be able to share that with you because it is quite possibly connected to this exact same word in being armed and equipped, because it's connected to the army. And when I was looking at this, we'll go back to my paperwork here. So it is, so it came from an old French word. So I was looking at vanguard because I've been hearing people throw this word vanguard around, and it's not something that I use in my day-to-day language. To me, it felt a little archaic. Like I just couldn't touch it. I was like, that's an interesting word. I don't want to just pick it up because it's a cliche. I want to be able to marinate in it and see what's being said. And so I've been holding on this word vanguard for like 3 months now, just going, okay. And then here, lo and behold, I look into the number 5 and it's connected. I'm like, okay. Okay, so Spirit was saying, pay attention. There's going to come a time when you're going to be able to fit this in to understand what's going on. So this van, they call it the van body, rear, and the two wings. I decided to go and look at it. So a vanguard is a group of people leading the way in new development or ideas. Well, what we are sharing here, although this is of an ancient past, in our today, in what we are experiencing and what is coming forward, these are new ideas that are coming forward to deal with the antiquated ideas that we have been held and we've been bound to through the English translations. And so other words that that have symbolism, we've got this a spearhead or a cutting edge of something that is coming forward to be presented to the people. And it's the forepart of an advancing army. So in our discussions before, we've talked about unconventional warfare. So many people can look around and see in the lesser narrative that there is warfare going on. There is quite extensive warfare going on. And we as the people are in the midst of this. Some of us have risen up higher out of the waters of chaos, but those that are in the chaos right now, they would most definitely say that we are in warfare. You know, and you can ask anybody, and unless they are with the narrative and are following along with the narrative, that they don't see the warfare. But those who are awake, who have woke up in 2020, would definitely say that we are. So this is something that we are doing that's different. This is the advancing of an army spiritually, that is a vanguard, that is bringing forth new ideas in the way that we work through our warfare of what they are presenting in the lesser narrative. At least that's how I see it. And I'm not telling anybody that. I'm just, this is how I see it. This is my truth and my reality. And I believe that Ken would probably agree with that, because we talk about this all the time. So now I have a much better idea of what the vanguard is, and this call that we have to be able to get this message out. And even just breaking down and looking at the word 5, you know, this is a new thought for us to be able to grasp a hold of, and like, oh my gosh, this changes the meaning of this parable just by looking and digging a little bit deeper and saying, how does this apply to me today in the midst of the warfare?
Yeah.
So cutting edge. And so it's from an old French word, and we've heard avant-garde. Well, it's the same thing. Avant-garde, even though they've used it for cutting edges, the way they would do potentially like burlesque things. I mean, I don't want to go down that road, but it means before guard. The front guard. Wow. And I can tie that into the judges that are the defenders of the people, where we've talked about the gardener and the garden, and who the judges are that are coming, that are the defenders of the people. So this is very much connected to that, to understand this new warfare that we are engaging in, this unconventional warfare that people are not going to see coming, because this has not been done before. Well, it was done 2,000 years ago. But we're bringing it forward today. We're restoring those ancient paths that were forgotten, buried, destroyed, discarded, hidden, and it's meant to come back for our today. But one thing, this is where I got really excited on this, because I try to sit and just ask the Spirit, okay, what's going on here? Can you please show me what's going on here? This is the same exact gematria, same letters, different order, for Mashach. And if that isn't ringing a bell, I will connect it. The difference of what you would hear as Mashiach and Mashach is that this is the substance, the gematria of the lump of clay, to present for someone to go through the process of getting the oil of anointing. Same exact gematria. So having said that, our unconventional warfare has to do with our excavation of that which is necessary to equip us, to arm us so that we can connect ourselves to the anointing. And it's being presented to us as a lump of clay, saying, what are you going to do with this information? Are you choosing to be part of the front guard? Are you the vanguard that is bringing this forward in the comprehension of the anointing that's coming? Are we going to be the first fruits? Because the first fruits, as far as I can tell in looking at it, they're the vanguard. They're the ones that are coming with a new way, a new development, new ideas, spearheaded, cutting edge way of looking at spirituality to bring it to the people. They're first on the scene. And that's what this is whole starting out with. I know that's a huge introduction and I'm going and I'm like belaboring it, but this word, like it floored me when I saw it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is raw material. It's the same gematria. And it's about arming and equipping us. So when we look at the letters themselves, we have the het. And so I'm gonna pull us back into the, so when we look at it, we have the het mem sheen. Well, the het, we know that that means outside in the paleo, but in the esoteric side, the hidden side, this is the letter that means life because it's het yod tov, and het yod is chai. This is the life of the covenant. What covenant? The covenant of the Father, which is the mark and sign, signature frequency of those who are exempt from judgment. The reason why they're exempt from judgment is because they've become one in the Father. They have entered into that place of unconditional love, so therefore they no longer judge. That's the beginning of this. So connecting this to the anointing, to the oil that we're seeking, is like seek life, seek the covenant. Because this is going to orient you on the outside. Like, how are you going to be seen by others? Are you going to be seen as having life, or are you the walking dead? Do you have life, and do you have it abundantly? Because that's what Yeshua came to give us, was abundant life, and it's right here. And then it tells you through the letters, it is sharing with us. And how do we do this? How do we arm and prepare ourselves and equip ourselves? Through the living water teachings of Mother and Father, so that when you're in the chaos, you can go through her teachings, and the Father's teaching is behind, because it's the hidden mem sophit behind it for the constituent letters that make up the symbol mem. So first through Mother, Father is right behind there. So the two living water teachings, which are going to take you through the consuming fire that is going to burn up your beast ego nature. There's nothing wrong with ego when it's properly oriented. The problem is that if we stay in ego, we're never going to be able to have the oneness unity with one another. And we are always going to have an improper view of one another because we're going to see each other as separate. Yeah. And so, because I've had questions about that. It's like, well, killing the beast ego sounds pretty extreme. Well, we're decreasing it because it's the process of decreasing it. And hence why that mirror is so effective. Because when you stop attaching yourself to identity, in fact, I'm gonna use an example. This has nothing to do with me, please. This isn't a way to go, Carrie, pat on the back. It was just something it just didn't even faze me. And that was very strange. And my heart was made big because of this. I was like, oh, that's good. That's very, very good. As I'm reparenting myself, because I had huge ego. I've had bruised and broken ego before that was quite beast-like. So there was something that I had posted on Facebook, and another person had taken my information, copied and pasted it, and put it on their YouTube or their Facebook page, and didn't attach credit to it. Didn't say this is from Carrie Husband or The Stand or anything. So it was posted as if it was this person's information. And it was brought to my attention, and it honestly didn't even faze me. I didn't even get hurt. I didn't even go, geez, how rude. They took that information and made it their own. I really didn't care. I was just excited that this person who had a much larger circle of influence was hearing the same information. I didn't care. It literally didn't faze me. And like I said, this is not a boasting. This is not a pride thing. This was one of those things. I looked at it as the mirror, and I could see less of me, and I could see the information being presented, because it really has nothing to do with me. And it has everything to do with all of us. So anyway, that's just an example of the mirror and being able to look at it. And so as we allow the consuming fire to burn up the ego nature, then this is exactly the process what we need through that lump of clay to be equipped so that we can seek and grasp and do something with the anointing that's being handed to us. Because, you know, again, we've said it many times that change doesn't happen without application. And so it's beautiful that it's actually showing us how to apply it right here. And then the very next word would be another word for judging. This has to do with a now principle. There's two words in Aramaic that mean now. Din is one of them and hasha is the other. And so the root of this, and I will show this to you so that not just taking my word for it, because I want you to be able to see it. And I know it's difficult because, oh, this is interesting. This one isn't a dalet noon. This one is in its static form, which is great because now we have two lumps of clay. We have the first lump of clay and the second lump of clay. So what are you going to do with what's being presented to you that is connected to equipping you? And then there's another word that between the Aramaic and the Hebrew, it means to judge. A judge that has been given power on the inside. The yod has been inserted between the dalet and the noon. And the dalet is the door to the inward man to find the revelation that you need because you recognize that you're poor and feeble in the inside. That's what the whole purpose of the door is. Like, let's open it up. Let's take a look on the inside and see that some of us are very poor and feeble on the inside of us. We haven't done that work. And so this seed vision is being planted and given to you so that you can deal with the fallen flesh nature, which is the whole point of equipping ourselves right here. So we have two lumps of clay of potentiality. And what are we going to do with it? Because it's meant for us to judge the inward man, not the external, not someone that's sitting across from us, but the door on the inside. And we've been given the vision of what we need, because this means power, means, and direction of the work and deed of the hand on the inside. So it's telling you already that you got to do something with this information to deal with your flesh. Because in it, if you do something with it through the work and the deed in the hand and the vision, then this is going to open up and be made available to you so that you can equip yourself. You can arm and equip yourself. Moving on, the next word that we look at is a very simple word. We've shared it before. You guys will get used to seeing this, but it doesn't hurt through inculcation to mention it again. In its essence, it's translated as from, and it's memnoon. And I know it's very difficult to see it. I mean, these are small letters, but it's memnoon. And this is two things here. Memnoon in Hebrew. So again, backing up, I know I've said this before, but for also inculcation, Hebrew and Aramaic are meant to be married together. The Hebrew is the divine masculine principle and Aramaic is the divine feminine. And together they're overlaid on top of each other so that you can see different aspects of where the divine masculine needs to be shored up and the divine feminine needs to be shored up, because both of them in our current day and age have become very toxic. So in through the divine masculine side of it, when we take a look at it, memnoon is the Hebrew word for manna. That which we are to consume every day. And the manna, when we break it down, the memnoon, this is the living water teachings of mother and father that you first must find in the waters of chaos in order to be birthed anew, born again into Father's teaching out of the chaos into the waters above. But it's hidden. It has to be hidden because we have to have that initial measurement requirement of the golden rule before you enter into the power of what the Father's bringing forth. And it is through the spiritual walk. That is the whole point. So the original manna, memnoon, was a fallen noon. And we see the fallen noon right here. So here we're taking what we need to judge ourselves on the inside through the manna that is being presented to us. So we go through the teachings of the living water, mother and father, that use the sacred languages so that we're out of the chaos into the waters of shalom above, the peaceful waters above. And this is the spiritual path, the noon. When it is in the elevated place, this is letting us know this is the work and the activity of life, perpetuity, to produce an heir, a seed of life that is given to us through the spiritual path, because this has nothing to do with the fallen flesh, has nothing to do with the material world. It is your daily manna that you consume and partake of, which is part of the spiritual path. And remember, this is the root. So what we see on the suffix side pertaining to father, because again, prefix is mother, suffix is father, and the root is source that's located in you, the spark of source that you're supposed to connect to. So this is on the suffix side. So this is saying that revelation is coming of the Father in his teachings to give you his power. So the revelation is meant to come from Father to give us the power of his teaching, the work and deed of our hand through that revelation. So this would be when we were talking about the hidden that's behind mother. So when we take a look at the mem sophit that's right behind it, this is now being revealed to us in the process of what we need as he gives us, because this is a hand that gives. This is his hand that is giving the power, means, and direction to deal with your fallen flesh. And that is what we are judging ourselves in, because the judging is only about ourselves and not the external with anybody else. And then you comprehend that when you understand the mirror, So this is providing the way through the manna, through the spiritual path of mother and father to bring this revelation to us so that we can rise up out of this lower beast ego nature. So even though it's such a simple word, there's so much here, and you would never see it in English. Because in English, in translating it or having a meaning of something as simple as from, you would just literally gloss over from and not even realize that the root is just mem noon. So even if you were to go, okay, so I read the word from, in my mind, I know it's the Hebrew word mem noon. If you didn't see what the writings were saying, you wouldn't see the code of what is being presented, that this is literally power that has been given to us. And it's interesting because we talk about going to the right hand all the time, and we speak it over and over and over about going to the right hand. Well, that is symbolic of going through the mother's path. And it's amazing because when you see in the language itself, anything that happens on the prefix is on the right-hand side. That is mother. And the way the Hebrew is read from right to left, we know that the first thing that you deal with is the right-hand side. Go the path of mother. So when the yod is now on the suffix side, this literally is the left hand of power that is being revealed to those who go through the way of the right hand. Because the right hand orientation is so important, because that's when we realize we are not going to do harm to someone outside of ourselves. This is really why the embodiment of the golden rule is so important, because the power that is being given through the Father, the creative power in the force, needs to be measured and stewarded through meekness. So mother humbles and tames the beast so that we do no harm to those who are on the outside of us, so that we can be given the greater measure of the power that comes from Father through his left hand. And that's actually a very triggering phase. And I understand that, because people will go, well, that's the hidden left hand. Well, it is. And many have abused it. And this is exactly why the language was taken away from us for such a long time, because humanity wasn't there yet. You think about the brutality, the things that have been done in the 20th century and even in the 19th century. And when you even take a look at like the settlers that came into the United States, before it was the United States, when it was just North America, and the displacement of it happened with the original inhabitants of the land here. That was not the golden rule. That was beast ego. I'm going to take this for myself. So this couldn't happen. This revelation couldn't happen back then. And it couldn't happen in the 20th century. Look at all the wars that were fought in the 20th century. We weren't ready for it. Not even close. And so it's being revealed in the 21st century. And we still have wars, but there are those of us out there that said, we've had enough. There has to be a better way. We are seeking peace. And so that's why it's coming now. And now we have the energies to support it too, with entering into the age of Aquarius, the water bearer, light and love. So that's why this is being presented now. That's why it's being presented now to us, because we're at the place where we can handle it. Then we get into the word that is wise, prudent, and cunning. And I find this very interesting because this word cunning is connected to the serpent. The serpent was the most cunning of all. And we have shared many times that the serpent is actually connected to the seraphim messenger, that it was worded the way it was in English so that people wouldn't understand why the seraphim came to give information to Adam and Chava so that they could be set free from their shackles of having a diminished consciousness, so that they could understand that there was a learning process in the system of duality, because they forgot they were Elohim. They totally forgot. And so the teachings were being presented back then, but all of that was obfuscated. So this is connected to the teachings that came to us to make one wise and prudent. And so in this, the Hebrew usage of this word, which is chakam, so that you know what the root is. Let me go back so we can use our vision here. The root is het, chaf, mem. That's the root. So we can already see, before we go back into the interpretation or what the word is saying to us, that we have the static word is not static. This is active. So just like this word became active and was no longer static. So we're taking our little lumps of clay and now we're doing something with them. This word is also active and it's not static. It's in the verb form. So we have the seed vision that is planted within us. This vision, the power, means, and direction by the work and deed of our hand, by going through into our inner man, into the place of where source dwells within us, our creative source energy, to deal with our fallen flesh. And I find it interesting that the last two letters is manna again. So we've got manna here and we've got manna here. The manna that's telling you there's a spiritual path to take, and the manna that's telling you you've got a lower flesh nature that you need to deal with, but the power has been given to you on the inside. So now let's go in and dig this out a little bit deeper to see, you know, what's the under layer, what's going on in this word that is germinating within us, because that seed's been planted. So in the Hebrew layer of this, we are talking about a word that means to be wise. And if anybody has heard the word sage, in fact, it's interesting because I remember speaking to Christians before when we were entering into Hebrew thought, and I would mention the word sage, the Hebrew sages, and the looks that I got, it was like horror, like doctrines of demons kind of thing. I can't listen to you. How dare you bring up the word sage when it just means a wise man and a scholar. So through our conditioning, we will just throw the baby out with the bathwater and instead of allowing fear to rule us and go, you know what, maybe I need to look into this. What does this word sage mean? So if this is Hebrew and these scriptures were written in Hebrew and Aramaic, maybe I should look into those meanings instead of just tossing them out because somebody told me that they were a doctrine of demons when it just means a wise man. That's all it means. A wise man and a scholar. It also has the Hebrew meaning of being prudent, skillful, and a learned individual. So when we started out, we were talking about being armed and equipped in this process. Well, this means that somebody has become skillful as a learned individual by that which came to arm and equip them. This is somebody that has been practicing this and has been doing something with it through the work and deed of their hand to make them one who has skill, to make them wise. and prudent. So the other mystery side of it, the history, the hidden side of that we wouldn't see unless we dug into it and had an idea of the language, is we have the word yamin in it. And yamin means to go to the right hand. This is from the word aman. And I recently shared a video about aman, what that means as the root of when we say amen, that this is a place of fostering, supporting, and nursing to lift us up so that we are firm and faithful. And there's much to be said about that word in growing us up in our maturation. Well, this yamin, to go to the right hand, is from that same root word. The difference being is instead of the aleph, it's a yod. So going to the right hand, you haven't become one yet. But mother, because it was an aleph, now removed, so the yod has been there. So mother is going to give you the power, means, and direction of what to do with your daily manna so that you can go through the right hand teaching. And this is part of what we see in this word of wisdom. But you would never see it unless you dug it out. You'd have no idea this was even in there. That's why I love the language so much, because the depth of what has been hidden, and now we have the ability to see it. Wow. This word also means to prepare, appoint, be prepared, and appointed. So we've got this theme going on here that we're arming ourselves, we're equipping ourselves to the past tense, right? So here's something coming to arm and equip you so that you can be armed and equipped. And then the next phase that we have, we're talking about wisdom, and it has to do with preparing ourselves as one who is appointed. So to appoint someone, to prepare them so that they can be prepared as the appointed. This is a beautiful theme. The other part that you wouldn't see, and we did talk about the manna, but memnoon by itself, even in Hebrew, has another thing that it is attached to it, and it means to be a part of. It also means like strings on an instrument, like a chord being played. So it is a reference to musical, to a frequency that is being generated by that which you attach yourself to, because it means to be a part of. So this means that we are engaging in something, to be a part of something to make us wise, to be skillful as a learned individual, a scholar. And I love this, regarded as auspicious, conducive to success and favorable. So these teachings are coming, and it's much, much more than just being armed and equipped for battle. It's more than being skilled and learned. This is meaning these are things that are conducive to having success in your life and having favor as one who has been prepared and appointed to do something with this information, with this lump of clay, to be a part of wisdom. And again, we have the het, right? So we have the life covenant by grasping a hold, kaf pei, filling our cup, taming and bending ourselves to the language that brings revelation, that is going to give us the power, means, and direction through the right hand. And because this noon is on here, again, this is telling us there's 3 words in a row here that all have the fallen noon. So in verse 2, it's letting us know that this noon needs to be elevated. And we've talked about the triple tav, we talked about the triple underpass, we've talked about the triple vav, 666 that has been bastardized. Well, this is letting us know it's a triple again. So again, if you can't connect all to all, it makes it really hard. And we try to portion it out in bite-sized pieces, but it gets pretty big, pretty large, pretty quickly. So noon, noon, noon. There's a fallen thing that is going on within you. And 3 times I need to mention it to you. Because there's 3 things that need to be dealt with that are part of your fallen nature. 3 things that we need to deal with. And you're going to have the wisdom in order to do it. You're going to know how to do it. And then as we move on, we have the word that is hava, which is hey, vav, aleph in its root form, in its static form, in its lump of clay form. But in this situation, it was morphed into a hey, vav, yod. Because again, we are talking about, when we were talking about the wise and foolish at the very beginning, the bride and the groom were coming to present a message. And the message that they were presenting was about oneness. So this cannot have an aleph in it. So what this is saying is, here's the static entity of to become, but now we're going to make it an action word for you. So there's going to be a vision, the power that is given from the Father, because this is now on the suffix side. This happened on the left-hand side. The vision, seed vision of the Father is coming to give you the power that you need to deal with that fallen flesh, because that's on the suffix side. And it's meant for you to turn yourself around from having the fallen flesh nature. It's interesting to note that in the Hebrew, this would be hey, vav, hey, which is the root of hey, yod, hey, haya. And if you've done some studying in this, you know that hey, yod, hey is the root of the tetragrammaton, the Greek word of yod, hey, vav, hey, which means to be, to become, and to come to pass. So this is here, this is the masculine, to be, to come to pass, that is now has the divine feminine on top of it, that is meant to be hey, vav, aleph, to be and to become one. But you're not there yet, because you have the fallen flesh, which means you have the beast ego. You have the fallen flesh nature that says we're separate, but I'm not going to leave you poor and destitute. I'm going to give you a vision and the power that you need to overcome that separation, that ego that says that we are separated. And now that static word of 5 in the very beginning that we had, the lump of clay, now has been made active. It has a vav added on the front. So what that is sharing with us is, by going through this and having this being explained to you, if you fully can grasp a hold of what is being presented through the power that is being given to you by the Father, you are then being able to connect to it through Mother first. So in other words, let me rephrase this a little bit differently. When we talk about the wise and foolish virgins, and we talked that there was a meeting that was happening, that the bride and the groom were coming to this group that didn't have this, they were in their fallen flesh nature. What they are doing is, now we are seeing what they are presenting. Verse 2 is a vision that they are painting to these people that they've come to, because they've already done it. They've already become. This is connected again. In the very beginning, I was connecting this to the 144,000 in their job of what they're called to do. So this verse 2 is giving the vision and painting the vision for those that they come to, that were caught in the procrastination, that were caught in the loitering, that didn't do anything because they didn't know that they needed to do anything. And they're going to be caught in that really cramped and confined place going, what did I miss? So verse 2 is literally the vision that is being painted so that they can recognize the fallen flesh nature, what prevented them from being a first of the first fruits, and telling them through this, there's something here that you can now grasp a hold of. This anointing, you can be armed, you can be equipped, you can be wise, you can be learned. You can have everything that you need, but the first thing that you have to do is you have to connect to Mother in humility. Because that is how you get to the Father. Nobody comes to the Father but through the Mother. And that was Yeshua's whole point. So if people need to connect this to Yeshua, that vibratory frequency of the name Yeshua, which means to come and help in the time of need as a rock, so that you're not on shifting sand, then that rock that is coming with a message to help deliver you through the work and deed of your own hand would be saying, connect to this message through me. I'm presenting this to you through Mother, but you're going to have to enter in her through her first. So you can be a part of this, so that I can bring you the revelation of the Father to give you the power that you need to elevate your flesh. And then we have the word foolish. This is the last word, and I'm not going to go any deeper because there is so much information in this verse that it floored me. For just such a few amount of words, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so incredible. This is what I find most interesting about this word foolish, because it's not what we think it is. But if you do not comprehend the Hebrew and the Aramaic, you would never see the morphology from the Hebrew to the Aramaic. You would never see the divine masculine that then takes us to the divine feminine of what is being presented here. So in Aramaic by itself, so this would be someone who is in the fallen flesh. They are of the beast ego nature. They would have no idea what's going on. So these teaching shepherds that have gone through this process is going to say, here is a message for you. Here's the vision I'm presenting to you of how to overcome your nature, to lift you up into something higher and better. But those who can't see it, that aren't able to see it, this is what happens. They will become confused by it. They're going to see it as very foolish. And they will probably act foolishly towards you, because in the mirror, because they don't see themselves in the oneness yet. They don't see any of that. They're still in their beast ego. They're still in the judging side. They still don't even know that there's a higher perspective that is being presented. And it's going to be very confusing to them. And so instead of looking like a fool, they're going to project that upon you. However, this is where I just love this. If you were to add an aleph to the prefix of this word, it means to have reason and to have sense.
The opposite.
The exact opposite. So when we are in the place where we are in separation and we don't recognize the unity of oneness, a person that's coming to bring that message to you, it's going to sound foolhardy. It's going to sound like gobbledygook. It's going to sound like I don't even know what to do with this. This is so foolish. This is not solving my problem. We need to fix this and that because it's broken. And those who have become are going to say, the only way we can fix it is by you going inside. And we want to present to you the seed vision to be able to prepare you and to equip you and give you what you need so you're learned and successful, so that you have favor in your life. So separation without this interpretation in Revelation, it's going to look foolish to people. And I already know that. I've already experienced that. But that's okay. That's okay. So the most fantastic part that I want to share with you in the progression of this, the beautiful part of it, is that this word also means to regard and to consider. And we see this in the connection. So they say foolish, but that means because we're in duality. So as this message comes to those who are in the fallen flesh, there's going to be some that say it's foolish. And this is confusing to me. And I'm going to project onto you because I don't want to look foolish. So I'm going to project it on you that you're foolish. And then there's going to be the other side of it that is going to hear this message and they're going to regard it. They're going to consider it. Duality. When you go from Hebrew to Aramaic, in Hebrew, this word would have a seen. So the letter Sheen with the dot, the dagesh, on the left-hand side, which is a representation of Father, the divine feminine principle of the consuming. So you've got divine masculine first, Mother, dagesh on the right-hand side, Sheen, dagesh on the left-hand side, consuming fire of Father, divine feminine, dot on the left-hand side. This word, sakol, has the dagesh on the left-hand side. And this is the Hebrew word that means to be desired, to be desired, to show oneself attentive, to understand, to look at, to consider, to instruct, to understand, make wise. We have that wise word again, different form of it. To make wise, to be circumspect, to give attention to consider, and to ponder. So this word can be seen both ways, dependent upon the mirror that you look at. Where are you? Is this message coming to one that they think is foolish? Or are you on the other side of it, that you're going to look at it, you're going to give attention to it, you're going to ponder it and consider it and see potentially that it's to make you wise, to instruct you? Or is it going to seem foolish? The very first time this Hebrew word is used is in Genesis 3:6, and it has to do with Chava, looking at the fruit on the tree of good and evil. She desired and saw that it was desired to make one wise. And if you want to look, I'm going to enlarge in this so that you can actually see this word, because this is the first time it's used. This is the law of first mention. So the very first time that this Hebrew word is used is in relationship to the tree of good and evil. The root, Sheen, Kaf, Lamed. And what do we have in front of it? We have a Lamed Hey. Again, we were talking about the serpent, the seraphim that came to bring instruction and a revelation, to make them wise, to give them power on the inside in the system of duality, this or that, so they could eventually find the narrow path between the two. And that's the very first usage of this word. And it got all twisted around. So when we go through the Hebrew side to the Aramaic, this is the beauty of the ancient Hebrew wedding. The dagesh on the left-hand side is the father. The dagesh on the right-hand side of the sheen is mother. Mother prepares you to be the bride, to get you into betrothal. The father, with divine feminine teaching, teaches you how to be the wife and queen as one who is set apart in her betrothal. So they're both preparatory. And when you cross over and you go from the bride to the wife, the scene, the semek or the sheen that has the dagesh on the left-hand side becomes a semek. So if you go through the process of mother and father's consuming fire and they become one, this word now has the semek added in front of it. And the semek is a symbolism. It's symbolic of the wedding ring and the signet ring, which means you're now surrounded, hedged in, supported, propped up, and there's a shield of thorns that surround you and protect you. So that, in Aramaic, Kaf Lamed means bride and crown. So this word, really, in actuality, if you see it through the lenses of one that wants to be learned, that wants to be instructed, that wants to be equipped and armed, to have skill, to be wise as a learned individual and have favor and success in your life, to prepare themselves as one who's been appointed, you will see this process and it will not be foolish to you. You will look upon it, you will consider it, you will give attention to it, you will ponder it, you will look at it and say, this is going to give me understanding and instruct me so that I can receive my wedding ring, so I can be supported, propped up, hedged in, and surrounded by a shield of thorns that are meant to protect me. Because as the bride, I am searching for that day when I am crowned. But right now, I recognize that I am in fallen flesh and I need help. That is the vision that is being painted, that the first fruits, the 144,000, are presenting to those who loitered and procrastinated and got caught not knowing that there was another way. And this is be presented to who? To whom? Kaf Lamed. That is the Hebrew word that means all. Everyone. Entirety. Because everyone is the bride and they just don't know it. And this is the spiritual awakening process. It's one thing to be made awake to what's going on in the world, in the lesser waters of chaos. It's a completely different thing to be awakened to the spiritual path while you're in the waters of chaos. To me, it's a twin process. Mother wakes you up to the chaos of the world. Father wakes you up to the spiritual path to bring you into the waters of shalom that are above and out of it. But you first must recognize and see that you need assistance because you're in the fallen material world. You have a beast ego that needs to be dealt with. And the resolve is coming to you in the form of this vision if you can just grasp a hold of it. That's the message that is being presented. Some will see it as foolish, and some will actually give attention to it in duality. Amen.
Amen.
Very short verse. Lots of information.
Yeah, wow. It was.
So in actuality, what that was, honestly, that was the true gospel message. That was the good news. The good news that is going to be presented to all. Because those who are here to do work as light workers, it is their heart intent that no one be left behind, that everyone would be presented this message. And then it is up to the individual to choose whether it is foolish to them or if they're going to give attention to it and consider it and ponder it to see that it is instruction to make them wise. That is really good news.